All right, so it is 11 o'clock. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to this CBME session panel where we're going to be we're going to take all of the key components of CBME and realize what's really happening on the front line here. We have some great experts with us today, and I'm going to let them all introduce themselves and what their various roles are. And then I will explain how we're going to get started here. So on my screen, the first person I have is Dr. Greta Wire. Can you start?
Good morning, afternoon, depending upon where you are. I'm Holly Greta Wire. Of course, this is interruption time. I am Associate Program Director at the Residency at Stanford. I'm also the EPA Implementation Lead at the Stanford School of Medicine and do a bunch of research in this domain.
And next I have Dr. Chappelle.
So I'm Eric Chappelle. I'm one of the APDs for the combined MGH program residency program, and I run the Harvard Medical School clerkships in emergency medicine at MGH.
Dr. Gisandi.
Mike Gisandi. I'm the Vice Chair of Education at Stanford and one of the co-directors of the Pearl Lab, the Precision Education Assessment Research Lab, with our hosts, Stephanie Seebach-Sire and Holly Greta Wire.
Dr. Font.
Hello, I'm Amber Fant. I am the Program Director in Emergency Medicine at Northwestern and the Director for Quality and Safety of McGaw, and I'm very interested in assessment as it relates to quality improvement.
Dr. Schnapp.
Hi there, I'm Ben Schnapp. I'm the Associate Program Director here at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, also the Graduate Medical Education Fellowship Director here.
And last but not least, Dr. Wolf.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carmen Wolf. I'm the Associate Program Director at Vanderbilt. Glad to be with you all today.
Excellent. So we have a great panel here. For those of you that have been living and breathing CBME for the last little bit, I just want to remind you of the 5 core components of CBME. So the first one, as the ACGME or Royal College, depending on where you're joining us from today, they talk about it being an outcomes framework. So that's the first one. Then we've got progressive sequencing of competencies. So we're going to unpack a little bit what that means. Learning experiences that are tailored to competencies. Teaching and the teaching that is tailored to competencies, and then finally programmatic assessment. So I think we've got a great panel here today to go through all of these activities or these questions that we have. So basically the way that it's going to work is we're going to call on 2 of our presenters and assign one of them to either the pro or the con side, and then we're going to ask them a question and we're going to see who gave the strongest answer. And it's not going to be me deciding, it's going to be all of you deciding here. So what I need you to do is just blow up the chat when I ask for your participation. I need you to turn around and tell me who you think won that battle, and we will continue throughout, and at the end we will see who is the CBME champion here. All right, so is everybody ready? Can I get some thumbs up? Can I get some stuff in the chat? Let me know that you're ready. Let me know that you're there. Looking good. Oh, awesome. Okay, here we go. So my first battle here, we're going to talk about what are the toughest aspects of CBME to implement. So just to make sure that I've got my audience there and that they're ready, throw it out there. Who do you want to hear? We need 2 people up to battle. I'm going to take the first 2 names I see in the chat there. Who would you like to see do this battle? Come on, audience, don't let me down. Dr. Gisandi, you are up. And who's going up against Dr. Gisandi? Come on, people.
Out of the gate, Baron.
There you go. Here
All right,
we go.
let's do it.
Okay, and so Dr. Gisandi, seeing as you were first, I'm going to give you the pro, and Dr. Schnapp, seeing as you were the second called upon, you're going to be the con. So here we go. Here is the question for you, everyone. The complexity of clinical work can be fundamentally reduced to categorical entrustment categories. Dr. Gisandi, you have 60 seconds. Go.
You say it again before you take my 60 seconds. The complexity of
clinical work.
Okay.
Can be fundamentally reduced to categorical entrustment categories.
Okay.
I should put these in the chat too, so everybody.
Oh, okay, great.
Here, let's do that.
So 60-second pro. Well, it absolutely can be reduced to fundamental and trustable professional activities. And we've successfully piloted that at Stanford through a new app that Holly Credit-Wire has created, where we have 23 entrustable professional activities that have been created, identified for emergency medicine. These are each broken down in an app so that you can individually assess each of these different competencies many, many times throughout the day. There's really a myriad of opportunities all throughout the day that are assessment decisions. How well did that trauma go? Did that bedside evaluation go well? Each of these can be assessed individually, despite the complexity of the system. Done. Was that 60 seconds? Do I have more time? I'll just keep talking if you want.
No, I'm going to jump in and say absolutely not. The complexity of what we do is far too complicated to reduce down to simplistic things like EPAs, and I point you to all of the really high level stuff that we do. It's about maintaining flow in the department. It's the very complicated task of helping a patient understand the futility of further treatment. These are not things that are easily distillable down into concrete pieces. And it's very difficult to put your finger when somebody is doing it incorrectly on what exactly they're doing it incorrectly. You're just like, that's not going to work. I can't trust you to do that. You're not good at it yet. So there's a lot that we're doing that is really complicated all the time. I think you guys know, you can kind of feel when those events are in the department. It's the decision of when to actually pull out your sedative medications and sedate the agitated patient. There's too much that it's not easily distillable down into its component parts. You want to rebuttal?
I was going to say, so Dr. Gismondi, I will give you a moment to rebut. If you feel you don't have to take it.
Oh, I'll take it.
All
So,
right.
a complex action absolutely has intrinsic parts to it, Ben. So let's talk about patient flow as an example. There's decisions that have to be made as to dispositions. There are actions that have to be taken to dispo those patients. There needs to be conversations with other staff members. You have to work in an interprofessional manner with your nurses. Each of these component parts, of which there are many more, have decisions that are being able to be made on a scale of, did I have to help this particular resident make these phone calls? Could I trust them to do it if I was just sitting over there? Are they an exemplar and I could walk out of the department? And those scales can be created for just about any action. And we have to, in programmatic assessment, gather tons of evidence in order to make an important assessment decision, particularly high stakes ones such as promotion to the next year of residency. So I respectfully rebut.
All right. And last words.
I'm going to say, by breaking a complicated task like flow down into that many different microscopic pieces, you've essentially gotten too far down into the weeds. When you're never going to be able to say of a patient, a resident that can't move the flow in the department, you're never going to be able to say, oh, well, it's the fact that they're not talking to the nurses enough to get them down. You're never going to be able to drill down to that degree of complexity for every resident in order to give them the kind of granular feedback that they're going to need for this.
All right, audience, I need you to vote right now in the chat. Who do you think won that battle? And come on, there's prizes at the end, so I need to. All right, I'm gonna give everyone just a couple more seconds.
And vote for yourself, obviously.
Closing now. So it looks like the winner of that is Ben. All right, Ben, you have been awarded that.
Congratulations.
Steph, you went on mute again.
I didn't really have anything to say other than the fist pump.
There you go. Congratulations, Ben. There you go. All right, don't worry. There will be lots of opportunities as we go through here. Okay, so the next question is going to be around faculty development. I noticed that we have Dr. Coates with us today. Can you throw a name in the chat of somebody that you'd like to hear battle it out around the topic of faculty development? All right, Dr. Chappelle, you are up. And who shall we pair against Dr. Chappelle here? Takers, anyone? All right, there we go. Let's do it. Dr. Font, you're up. Okay, so here's the question. I'm going to read it and also drop it in the chat. Okay, so you have a certain number of faculty members. Do you take 10% of them and create a cadre of extensively trained super assessors, or do you do a shorter faculty development session and train everybody to do assessments? So for the pro, we're going to assign Dr. Chappelle, and for the con, we're going to assign Dr. Font. So Dr. Chappelle, you have 60 seconds.
All right. So my pro, am I pro 10% or am I pro everybody? Pro 10%? All right. I think that obviously you have to go with the 10%. If you don't have appropriately trained educators and you're making decisions about something as high stakes about whether or not somebody's going to be moved on from residency and potentially board certified to practice in the world, you have to have high quality assessments, the sort of garbage in, garbage out. If we don't have high quality assessors, then we're not going to be able to make meaningful decisions, and we could either delay or inappropriately advance people based on poor assessments. So if we have ratings from people that are either erratic in their ratings, systematically low, systematically high, or worse than that, which is variably low, variably high, or biased in ways that we aren't able to detect quickly, whether that's from a lack of training or a poor selection from the beginning, we're going to be in trouble. And so keeping track of a smaller group is a lot more realistic to be able to do in terms of the quality of their assessments. Whereas if you're trying to measure not only the quality of the assessments, but also detect and correct poor assessments in a faculty group that, for example, mine is close to 140 people, that's going to be unrealistic. And so the priority should be going with the 10%.
All right, I'm for the rebuttal.
All right. So I hear your point, Eric, and I think that there is certainly some merits to the argument that you need to train people well, but I will counter that that is going to produce a ton of bias in your assessments. If you only have 10% of your faculty, that is at most 10% of the encounters that a resident is going to be able to have with faculty over the course of their career, and probably less, because let's be real, you're going to pick your education faculty that probably have a buy down and are maybe not working quite as much as some of your other purely clinical faculty. So you're going to be seeing a very, very small slice of activities that are going to be assessed for these residents and are going to be missing an entire chunk of other behaviors. Therefore, it's going to be an incredibly skewed assessment compared to what you can get from everybody. While I totally understand that not everybody is going to understand the system, and we have seen that with milestones, I think it's better to provide a little bit of training for all of your faculty so that every single encounter that a resident has with a patient can generate an assessment that is at least somewhat that is done by a faculty that's had at least some bit of training from this brief faculty development session. So while I respect your decision, I think everybody has to get a little bit of training so that everybody can provide assessments. Otherwise, it's going to be skewed.
All right, audience, I need your help here. In the chat, you're either going to vote for Eric or you're going to vote for Abra. What do you think? Who's made the more compelling argument, and what are you going to do with CBME at your institution? What are you currently doing with CBME at your institution? Okay. Oh, it looks like we got a landslide here. Yay, Abra. Okay. In the interest of fairness and making sure that everybody gets an opportunity to participate, I'm going to call on Dr. Wolf and Dr. Coretta Wire here to go at it. And your question is going to be around summative decision making. Okay. Oh, we've got a thing here, not against the person, just against the argument. Gotcha. Okay. So just a reminder that none of us should take any of this personally, although we're all battling it out for the amazing bottle of wine that someone is going to win at the end of this. Okay, so this question is about summative decision-making. We're going to get Dr. Wolf and Dr. Coretta Wire on this one. Dr. Wolf, I'm going to ask you to be the pro for this argument. And Dr. Coretta Wire, I'm going to ask you to be the con for this argument. And the question, as I've just dropped it in the chat here, is can CBME be done without programmatic assessment? All right, give me a second there. Whenever you're ready, Dr. Wolf, 60 seconds, go.
All right. So we rely on AI to do a lot of things for us in our entire lives. Why not use AI to participate and help us with this decision making? If we have enough data and the data is generated in a thoughtful manner and collected in an unbiased, thoughtful manner, and then you have enough to put into a system, it should be able to calculate and compute an answer for us rather than us trying to sit down in these large groups and figure out what the answer should be. I think that this would decrease faculty time, faculty, necessitating faculty getting together and spending all this time coming through this data. If we're going to generate this much data, we may as well use AI to put it all together and then just to basically tell us the answer at the end so that we can make decisions that are data-based rather than based on feelings.
Okay. Dr. Coretta Wire.
I mean, I like feelings. Yes, AI holds a lot of promise, but letting the machines make the decisions is like letting the inmates run the asylum, right? And all machine learning at this stage of the game, at least machine learning that does anything meaningful, is human driven, right? It's trained by people who are fallible. If we're going to have humans train machines to make likely poorer decisions than we're all going to make individually, why not get a group of people together to kind of reference that against each other? I mean, this is the whole premise behind competency committees. So you gather all of this data, the data from the copious number of faculty assessors that Dr. Frant has said that we need. And they all send in all of these different data points. We get all this narrative data. The competency committee sits down and looks at it, and you have this dual layered process where, one person says, here's how I see it. Another person says, here's how I see it. And the power of that subjectivity in that group decision-making process is going to give you much better decisions than an individual machine or an individual person ever could. Ole Tenkate's paper about the power of subjectivity tells us that. And so having the diverse perspectives, the diverse judgments, the multiple eyes on the data is really where good decision-making comes from. How we make reliable, defensible promotions decisions, how we ensure that trainees are getting good feedback out of our competency committees. Programmatic assessment in that way is completely essential, not just for us to make good decisions, but also to give trainees feedback that will tell them how they actually get to the next level. The machines cannot do that.
Dr. Wolf, do you have a rebuttal to that?
It's hard. I've got a hard side to argue here. Let's see. I'll say that the sheer quantity of data that you all propose to be generated from these multiple mini assessments from every single one of your faculty members, the ability for people to take all of that data and synthesize it in a meaningful way for every single resident in your program is a bit unreasonable to expect a single faculty member or even a group of people to do. The sheer number of hours that is going to take would be tens if not hundreds of hours to do it appropriately for a program of a reasonable size.
And Dr. Coretta Wire.
So at scale, yeah, hard. But I will say that we've been doing this, in a program of 60 residents, and it's worked well enough. And I think it's, maybe the argument could be that it's harder to get the data. And in that case, programmatic assessment also helps you identify the gaps in your data and figure out how to fill them so that you're making easier decisions because you're going to have more/better data. And I will say, like, doing it at scale in a 60 resident program is very different than, doing this in a 160 medical student class, which is what we're starting to do at the UME level. Feel like maybe your scale concern is more weight in that realm, just because we have, no idea how to do it at such a huge amount of students. But 60 residents, I think we can handle it.
All right, everyone, I need you to vote now. Are you voting for Dr. Wolf or Dr. Coretta Wire here? What do you think? Are we down with the machines, or are we embracing the future? Okay, so it looks like the winner there is Dr. Coretta Wire. Thank you very much for your participation there. Okay, well, seeing as we've got this amazing panel of people who have so much experience in assessment, I can't help but throw another assessment question out there. So please put in the chat who you would like to see battle it out for another assessment question. I'm going to take the first two names I see. And currently, because nobody is voting, I'm still seeing Holly Coretta Wire. So I got one that was like, I want Holly Coretta Wire and Dr. Gisandi. Here we go. This is the
Bring it on.
the Tyson Vander Holyfield of fights. Here we go. Okay. So let's see who's going to take the pro here. Did you do pro or con last time? Let's make Dr. Coretta the pro here. Let's make Dr. Gisandi the con. Okay, and here is your question, throwing it in the chat here. There you go. Okay, so faculty will never have enough time on shift to do proper workplace-based assessments for all the necessary components of patient care. Dr. Coretta Wire, you as the pro are
Handicapped. All right. I mean, I think all of our faculty are overtaxed. This gets back to kind of this idea around if we're going to train all the faculty to be assessors, we're going to hope that we're going to get some semblance of data from at least a couple of them, half of them. I can't imagine that all of them will do this, because if you think about it, charting alone takes half of our shift. And add into that, you have to teach residents, you have to deal with phone calls, you have to address radio calls, you have people coming to you with concerns. Then you're telling me I have to go in and directly observe trainees on shift and provide meaningful assessments of how much supervision they needed to do, probably a couple of different tasks in a given shift. And then I have to document that assessment. Forget about it. That's impossible.
all right. Dr. Gisandi,
I'm the pro. I thought I was the con,
you are the con.
but I am the con. That sounded like the con. Wasn't that the con?
No, it's the pro.
Oh, we'll never have enough time. Okay, good.
I agree.
All right, I've already lost people. All right, so faculty are very busy, right? So patient care comes first. Education comes very near the top, but is still kind of second. So some days you just don't have enough time to get it all done. And we see this bear itself out in practicality. We have to be pragmatists here. So faculty barely give feedback that's anything better than read more. And we have to train them to even do that, right? And assessment requires expertise. It requires us to have some basic knowledge. We just talked about that in one of the previous questions, that if we train everybody to do it a little bit better, that's a start, but they're not going to be able to do it throughout their shift. And workplace-based assessment, links to programmatic assessment. It's multiple data sources, lots and lots of evidence, and we just can't generate that on a single shift. Finally, I think the direct observation that Holly said that we need to have also doesn't happen. We know that the average resident gets directly observed less than 10 times in all of residency, and medical students are right about there in the literature as well. So if they're not doing that already, it's really hard to imagine that they're 100% of the time going to be able to be trained to do that. I just don't think it's practical. And as a pragmatist and a pessimist, I yield the floor.
Mike, you were supposed to argue the other side.
Oh, was I? Okay. That they couldn't do it.
I was like, I'll take the other side now.
All right. Well,
All right, I was going to say, teed it up for you. There you
I
go.
was really good at it, though. I mean, you got to admit.
Dr. Coretta Wire.
I mean, clearly we can do this. We are doing it. You just have to make the assessments approachable. It has to be something where I can watch you do something discrete, something that I probably already watch you do, like run a resuscitation, talk to a patient, order some medications, discharge instructions, something I'm going to watch you do every single day. And it's really just capturing the decisions I already make. If I'm going to entrust you to do something with minimal supervision, or I need to hold your hand through it, I just document it. And then it forces me to give you feedback. It's really just documenting conversations we should already be having with our trainees anyways. If you can't give somebody 90 seconds worth of feedback on your shift, what kind of dumpster fire are you working in?
All right, Dr. Gisandi, do you want the last word there? And unmute yourself. You don't really unmute yourself.
Mike, you're muted.
God, I said something funny. So, I don't even know what question I was answering. And this is why, Dr. Seebeck-Sire, you put a negative and a negative together. It was a never and a con. And that's a no-no in medical education. I would think that you would have known that. So that's why I was confused. And, it's always the trainee and the learner who benefits.
I argue both sides, therefore I win.
And with that, we are declaring Dr. Credawire the winner of that round. All right, moving on here. We need 2 more people. Who would you like to see? If not, I'm going to just keep calling on this panel here. We're gonna keep grilling them with questions. Oh, I like the idea of micro assessment in general. It allows for direct observation of small tasks and doesn't have much of a burden. I would agree with you. All right, this next question is really good. Oh, nice. Okay, you have been called. Let me see who did the pro and who did the con. So last time, Eric, you did the pro, so I'm gonna say that you're gonna do the con this time. And Ben, you're gonna do the pro. All right, I love this. It's gonna be so great here. Okay, here we go. Question coming up in the chat, and then I'm gonna read it to you here. Residents will sue us as programs if we don't graduate them as soon as they meet their competency threshold. This is America, right? We don't have these problems in Canada. That's what I would told you. Just not as bad. All right, Dr. Schnapp, you're up.
So, I mean, I think that it's pretty obvious now. There's a standard that's been established. People know and sign up for residency programs of a certain length. And in some sense, we're stealing from them if we keep them here for 5 years instead of 3 years. That's 2 extra years that they could be making hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the financial incentive is absolutely there for us to get sued for this sort of thing. And where there's a financial incentive, there are going to be lawyers. Somebody's going to be really excited to make some case law about exactly this, because as you guys were saying, this is America. Somebody's going to be on top of this. And you know what? As much data as we're going to be able to generate with these micro assessments and all that, everybody's going to be called up to the stand. So you're going to say, well, what was this based on? Is this really something that's defensible? And I don't know if we're really going to be prepared to answer that question. I hope we are, but I think it's going to be too inviting a target just based on the amount of money that's involved.
Dr. Chappelle for the response.
All right. So I think that there is a scenario in which we could set ourselves up for failure and having trainees sue us if we don't graduate them the instant we have evidence that they could practice at the minimum possible standard. The 2 reasons I don't think this is going to happen is because 1, that's not the standard we're going to set up. We're not going to say that the sole criteria for graduation from a US residency training program is being the worst possible emergency physician that you could be. I don't think that any of us want to be in the business of turning out the worst, universally turning out the worst possible version of what we could. So I think that we are going to set ourselves up by saying that the graduation criteria are going to involve not only meeting that minimum standard, but also some other criteria, whether that is universally set at a national level or set at the program level, like you would graduate from this program with XYZ additional experience or expertise in addition to your minimum clinical standard, whether that's an additional clinical standard of excellence, whether that is an area of interest or an area of passion for the program. But that's going to be the first one. And the second is that we can and should have mechanisms for retaining trainees that are able to practice independently before they move on from graduation, in part because it's going to get so sloppy if we're graduating people, January, August, October for fellowship opportunities, for all of these different opportunities of subsequent training. It's going to get really messy if we have highly variable, like an infinite variability, like graduate from residency on May 22nd, I graduate from fellowship on October 3rd. We have to have some consistency, but we can give ourselves buffer within the system to have people practicing independently under the umbrella of their training institution, and then release them at scheduled times. Maybe it's more often than annually, but have graduations perhaps semi-annually, quarterly, whatever it is. But setting ourselves up for success, not only in graduating something other than the worst possible residence that we could, but then also for having a coherent educational system where we can transition between organizations.
Dr. Schnapp, would you like to reply?
I'm going to defer.
Okay. All right. Let's.
So I just like one question to the question in the chat, the mastery, not minimum standards. So it's all the same. One person's mastery is another person's minimum standard. If you say mastery is X, I say that that is the minimum standard. And so if mastery is the criteria for moving on, that's the minimum standard. So I think it's one and the same. And we can set the bar incredibly high. We can say that people graduate like extremely competent or whatever. They're going to be totally excellent physicians. But as soon as we do that, we're not going to be able to graduate as many people because people aren't going to be able to meet the standard.
Excellent. All right. Unless I hear. Yes, that's where I was going with that. Thank you. I think Eric won that round. Awesome. All right, we are moving on. We're going to start talking about individualized learning plans, and I'm going to call on Dr. Wolf and Dr. Font for this one. And maybe Dr. Font, if you can take the pro, and Dr. Wolf, if you can take the con. My statement for you here is, or question, I suppose, is, are individualized learning or individualized learning plans, tailored education, however you're calling it at your particular institution, is that essential for the success of CBME?
Yes. So the entire premise of competency-based medical education is individualized, right? We are no longer saying that because you are a third-year resident, you have achieved the level that you need for graduation. We are looking at individual performance in individual workplace-based assessments. Therefore, a one-size-fits-all approach with learning plans is never going to be appropriate. We've tried this in the past, right? We have a didactic series that we give to everybody, and we know that people learn at different speeds. They learn differently than each other. So trying to create one learning plan that people are going to go through from start to finish is never going to fit with the model that we need to then start assessing people on an individual basis. It is absolutely important to have this sort of precision mindset that everything needs to be tailored to the learner so that then they're able to perform at the highest level and then be able to assess them at that level. So 100% individualized learning is absolutely essential. There is no way to do CBME if we're trying to do this all in block.
All right. So yes, while individuals learn differently, there is a limit to what we can provide as far as educators and as far as a curriculum. We have to have some type of thing that we're providing to the learners, and there's no way for a lecturer to create 60 different lectures that are tailored to each specific learner's current understanding of AFib and what they need to learn next. At some point, we just have to deliver the information and let the residents get what they can from the information that's presented to them. Learning plans, we may have some different choices, some different, like a menu option that people can choose from, but at the end of the day, there's only so many ways that we can put things together that are going to adequately teach the information that needs to be transmitted to these learners.
I would counter that with the learning plans should be driven and co-created by the trainees. So while people may end up following very similar paths, they're still being, the plans are being created by the trainee in conjunction with the educators. Therefore, my plan, even though it looks a lot like your plan, is going to be ever so slightly different.
I think you can have that opportunity for the learner to participate and create a plan, but I think at the end of the day, when you look at the plans across your 60 residents, there's not going to be that much variation among them.
Well, there's a comment in the chat of when do we start charging residents tuition in order to hire all of the educators that we need? All right, audience, I need your help with this one. This one wasn't quite as easy. What do we say? Who is the winner of this battle? Can't all be feeling like me. We got a group think here. Come on. All right, thank you. Oh, this is not helpful. Tie. All right. You know what? I agree. I will give it to both of you. It was, if you saw the chat, it was Dr. Wolf, Dr. Fo, Dr. Wolf. So there you go. Excellent. Thank you for a wonderful round there. All right. We are moving on. We're going to talk about the challenges of time variable progression. So we've got just a couple more rounds here. Who do you want to see? This is going to be your last chance to get your input in. And panelists, you can decide if there's someone you want to take on. Gisandi versus Gisandi. All right.
I'll argue with myself. I'll argue with anyone.
Dr. Harder, would you like to jump in the ring?
We did.
I'm being highly entertained. Thank you very much.
I think we should have a panelist battle one of our audience members.
I vote for Dr. Harder. All right, you are up. Dr. Harder, who would you like to take on?
Gisandi, of course.
Dr.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you know what? And this is just a perfect question here for you two. Or I guess, you know what? We're going to make this even more interesting. We're going to frame it as a scenario, right? From one program director to, or one program director and another. Okay, so you did.
First of all, I was his program director. So let's just, if he doesn't want a certificate taken away, he better be careful.
Eventually, Darth Vader died. I'm just
so you determined based upon that you have a senior resident who needs to stay the other year. This never happens, right? You know, right? Last CCC meeting, last month of the training, and your GME office says no, you have to graduate them on time. So seeing as Dr. Harder is our guest here, I'd like you to create an argument either for or against, and Dr. Gisandi, you need to argue the opposite. All right.
So have I been this person's program director for the entire 4 years, or am I inheriting this person with 1 year to go?
Let's say you've been there for the entire 4 years. I know you put in lots of years of service.
It's obvious that if they don't meet the standards that you have set for graduation or promotion along the way, you shouldn't be promoting or graduating them. So first of all, if the GME office is going to make this claim and not let me graduate or make me graduate this person who should not be graduating, then maybe I should be looking for another job. So my argument is that the program director is ultimately responsible for the quality of the graduate, not the GME office, and that I've got set criteria, and if we're using competency-based and they haven't passed all their competencies, then they haven't passed all their competencies, and we have to keep working on them. I have, in parentheses, I have kept people a little bit longer in the past, but and made them do a little extra work to be sure that they were ready to graduate. So this can happen. On to you, Mike.
Well, there's a limited amount of dollars in our GME system. There is. Programs are way over the cap. Institutions are way over the cap. And there's got to be a limit to the number of years that a trainee is allowed to stay. One would argue that if you have to stay for an extra year, Dr. Harder, that this person would have been probated at some point along the way, not just remediated, and probably failed remediation if you're keeping him for another year. Because I know you're such a good program director, you would have put him through remediation and then ultimately through probation in order to get to the point of such a disciplinary action as to keep him for another year. So probation really shouldn't be a very long period of time. The literature suggests that maybe probation is at best a 3-month exercise. And if somebody can't turn it around in a short period of time, then it's unlikely that they're ever going to turn it around. So it's either that you don't have the kahunas to just tell this resident that, they weren't appropriate for our specialty and they can't hack it, which really nobody in medical education does, right? Does anybody fail out of medical school? Does anybody fail out of residency? I think your DIO is doing a service to the public, because that's what you're signing off on, is public safety when you sign off on this person's diploma.
Well, I will rebut quickly by reminding everyone that I did keep you an extra year. So.
I didn't hear it. What did you say?
I'm rebutting by telling everyone that I did keep you an extra year.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, so we'll start with that. I'm not going to disagree with you about the intermediary steps. That was not part of the question, but it was a smooth move from a good arguer.
Well, thank you so much for that, Dr. Harder. And actually, I just want to draw people's attention to a couple comments in the chat. And seeing as we have many former and current program directors here, if residents can appeal the process, there's my Canadianness coming through, can PDs also appeal? And then one of the responses was, they can't. It's found out by last year at WashU. Is this something that is unique to WashU, or is this, has anybody had this experience? Willing to talk about it?
I know that I think
That's fascinating.
So, as I mentioned earlier, I did have one case where I had to keep someone longer, and I did work with my DIO, who basically said it was my decision, and they were willing to support this person for additional training. It was not a long period. There were a few things that we thought they needed to work on, and we kind of monitored that. And this was, back in the old days. This was a 3-year program where, as we know, you need at least 4 now to be.
You do.
Oh wait, no, never mind. That's a different. That's the mic argument.
Nice.
Dr. Chappelle, you said you were going to ask or respond or share something.
I was just going to say, I think that the GME office here would go with the evidence. I think that it's similar to what Mike was talking about with the, where's the remediation, probation, all of that. If you decide at the 11th hour that you're going to try somebody for murder, you better have evidence. If you decide at the 11th hour you're going to hold somebody back from graduation, you better have the evidence. And if you don't, their lawyer's going to win. So like, you can try not to sign the paper, but you're going to look really bad in the process. So I think it's all about the evidence.
And I would agree with that completely. You have to have a paper trail, and you have to have the evidence lined up.
Yeah, and I'll just throw out there what happened. So you have the GME is separate and the DIO are separate from the appeals committee. So our GME and our DIO agreed with our opinion and said the same thing they said to you, Phil, which was, it's your decision. We will support you in your decision based on the information. The resident agreed, and then the resident retracted her agreement and hadn't actually signed the document yet. And so at the last minute, she retracted agreeing to be extended, at which point she appealed. And then the appeals committee made up of program directors felt that our documentation didn't support holding her back for 6 months. And it was really our CCC that just didn't have we didn't have enough documentation in her clinical performance and in our milestones to support it. Even though 100% of the CCC agreed with the decision.
I think sometimes it also gets tricky as well, because there's, when you're thinking about competence or you're thinking about patient care and what we want trainees to be able to do, it's very multifaceted. So maybe, the documentation is for, a deficiency or something in medical knowledge or whatnot, but then, at the last hour, it might be something related to professionalism. So it's hard to, I think, as one of the things that has been mentioned in the chat, document everything, not just what you think is relevant at any particular point in time. All right, so thank you for that. We're gonna give the win there to Dr. Harder. Thank you so much for being our guest panelist on this one. So tallying everything up, we have a tie, and so we have to have one more round to see who is the ultimate winner here today. And so I need Dr. Font and Dr. Coretta Wire to step up here. And I'm going to ask you a question about residency selection, because you could make the argument that if we just selected people better, we wouldn't have any problems. So the pro, we're going to have Dr. Font. The con, we're going to have Dr. Coretta Wire. And I definitely need audience participation from all of you in terms of voting, so make sure you're listening carefully. All right, here we go. Here's your question. The implementation of CBME leaves residency programs without a reliable method of selecting new residents. Whenever you're ready, Dr. Font.
Okay, this is, I think, my personal nightmare. So yes, this becomes really, really tricky. We all know that there are a million different pieces of information that we get about medical students when they apply to residency. And we all sort of set different criteria, but a lot of those are going to be academically based. We're looking at their performance on rotations. We're looking at their performance on test scores, for better or for worse. If medical schools 100% adopt CBME, then to graduate, we're going to presume that all of these people are going to be performing at that level. And per Eric, it might be mastery, it might be minimal, wherever it is. If they're graduating, they have achieved that level. Therefore, there is no way to differentiate from one student to the next, other than some of their perhaps personal characteristics. It's going to make it impossible to sort through the now over 1,000 applications that we all get every year for students to come down to our 12, 16, 20 positions that we need an intern year. If everything from an academic perspective is now CBME, I might as well just throw darts at a dartboard.
Eric nodding, agreeing with you. Okay. So maybe I'm the Bernie Sanders of this argument and I'm so far to the left, but we want everyone to be good at their job, right? We want everyone to meet that minimum level of competence. And I think without that, we know that we're still getting an incredibly heterogeneous product in our interns when they show up. And I think there needs to be some semblance of standards that are set. And without eliminating a lot of what I call the garbage metrics, meaning getting rid of all the things that we use in residency selection at this point, which don't predict resident performance in residency at all. We're going to have students who are still pandering to grades and test scores, which don't mean anything for us in the end anyways, other than arbitrary screening metrics that don't help us, and are going to continue to ensure that we're going to get a heterogeneous product who's not focused on their growth and is just simply focused on getting an honors grade, which often just means they picked the right song in the operating room for the surgeon that day. So in the end, if you take all of those garbage metrics and you burn them to the ground, you get rid of them, and we go to CBME, it's up to us in residency education to delineate what is the outcome of our programs, what is it that we're trying to achieve, and what is the job we're hiring people to do. Because I will say that our program is probably not the same as Northwestern, as Hamer, as Wisconsin, as Vandy. We don't offer the same things. We don't have the same strengths. We can't train each of these, now residents in the exact same way. Where some of us are really good at training them in certain areas, some of us are really bad at training them in those areas, perhaps. And so we need to really kind of walk this back to what is the design outcome of our programs? What is their responsibility to society? But what is it also that we as a program have to offer? And what is the necessary substrate that the people coming into our program need to have in order to meet the outcome with the things we have to offer them? Because it's not what we're doing right now. We're really just throwing, honestly, darts at a dartboard and saying, well, a 250 means something, and this honors grade and this specific clerkship means something. And, the SLO that this person got from this place, well, they give everyone honors, and it's hard to interpret. Like, all the things we're using right now at this point really don't tell us anything.
Dr. Font, would you like to respond?
So I do agree that there are some garbage metrics, but the end of the day is still, how am I going to read 12,000 applications in 1 week and be able to find the people that then I can look at for these other characteristics that may be the things that I do best as a program? I need some way to shuffle through them. And, maybe that's not on the responsibility of CBME. Maybe that's more about how we target medical students and their application habits. But I need something to go by. And if everyone looks exactly the same when they come out of medical school, I don't know how to do that.
Right.
So I don't disagree with that premise, but I don't think they're all going to look the same. And I think that there will be other things that we're going to, quote unquote, be able to filter by. But I actually do think that you made the point that I would have made. It's not necessarily the responsibility of CBME to fix applicant behavior and, frankly, program bad behavior too, because we, in our lack of transparency, have, fostered a lot of, we have no idea what we're applying to. So I think that's where the job description comes in. But I also think it is on schools and advising, and honestly, the things that you probably all read in the UGRC recommendations on the coalition in the last couple of weeks around really giving applicants a good sense of what they're good at and where they should be applying, instead of this willy-nilly, like just spray the entire board with your application and hope for the best.
All right, so I need everybody, we got 20 people here. I need everybody to vote now. Who was the winner of that battle? No, we're not tying. What is with everyone with these ties? You wrote tie, you need to pick a side. Pick a side. This is for the win. I don't have 2 CBME fundies. I only have 1 CBME fundie here. So.
There's wine at stake here, people. This is important.
Come on. I vote. It literally, people, I swear, are just putting ties in there to mess with me. Someone said I should decide whether I'm willing to pay for shipping. So, all right, we will. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us. If you can either unmute or using your annotator reaction functions, please give a round of applause for our panelists and for being such good sports here today. Thank you so much for joining us as we battled it out talking about CBME and all the challenges that exist on the front lines. And if you ever would like to discuss anything CBME related, here are your expert panels. You can call or contact them at any time. Thank you so much for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of SAEM.
Thanks for having us, Dr. Seebach-Sire.
Thanks for being a great host for the rap battle.
Thank you.